Hey, welcome back to Everyday Jesus. My name is Derek. Thank you for being here. I'm up here right now on some family land up at a farm that my family has a little ways north of where we live. And of course, being out on a farm reminds me of a lot of the parables of Jesus. There's so many parables that he gives about farming and growth and things like that, and it's so instructive. And I've been thinking this morning about one parable that Jesus gives in Matthew. Of course, the parables are pictures of what his rule is like, what his reign is like, and ultimately what his character is and how we can follow him and be like him. And one parable that I've been thinking about today, Jesus tells his disciples, he says the kingdom of God is like a farmer who basically sows a bunch of seed, and at night an enemy came in and sowed a bunch of bad seed among the good seed. And he says, as it starts to grow up, the servants see and they say, oh, look, there's some bad seed in the field among the good. Do you want us to go rip it up? And he says, the master says, no, because in tearing up the bad seed, you'll ruin some of the good, what I've planted. He says, wait until the end. Once everything is grown, they grow up together, the good and the bad, and then it'll be sorted out in the end. And I can't help but think, that this is true so often in our lives, even as I reflect on our social discourse right now and some temptations that we have as followers of Jesus. One temptation is to root out the bad seed and go identify it and pull it out and fight it. But I wonder if sometimes the Lord sometimes tells us, well, that's not our job. Because sometimes in rooting out the bad, will actually destroy some of the good. I know it's tempting to paint people in two dimensions. People are all good or all bad. This camp's all good, all bad. We need to root that out, fight this evil. And it's not to say that we shouldn't be discerning, right? But I do think it gets troublesome when we feel like it's our job to root that out. Maybe the Lord sometimes tells us, let it grow, because I don't want you to destroy what's good that I've planted, that's mixed in there among it. I think sometimes it's true even in our own lives, right? We see that there's some good in us, some bad in us, and as we're following Jesus, we're going to be a lot more discerning. But I wonder if he doesn't want us to focus more on cultivating and continuing to water and let grow what's good, continue to pour in and cultivate the life that's there, and not focus so much on rooting out evil, on fighting the bad and tearing it apart, right? Again, in our social discourse, I think we run a big risk of causing more damage in trying to root out evil and to fight people that we see as wrong or bad or evil. We run the damage of harming what's good. And I think Jesus calls us to that. I think he calls us to discernment, but also letting him sort some of that out at the end, right? And maybe our job is to water, pour in, to grow the good life, the good seed that will grow into fruition, into fruit for the end. So I encourage you today to maybe especially in this time where there's so much contention, there is so much evil in the world. We all know it. We might have different understandings of what it is or who it is, and often we're right. But I think he wants us to focus on watering the good seed. And it's not a complete analogy, but I wonder if we focused more on watering the good seed, that would take over versus pulling up the bad. So that's what I want to do in this time as we're trying to navigate this social and cultural space. There is a lot wrong, but I think maybe it's my job to, in my life and in the lives of those around me, to water what's good. And I think if we saw more of that in our culture, we would see a lot more good fruit come. Because good fruit won't grow out of destroying evil. It will only grow and only come if we cultivate it and pour life in. So that's my charge to you today. That's my encouragement to you today. Find where there is good in people. Find where the good is in those around you, even in those, especially in those that you are tempted to hate or tempted to have negative feelings for, and you see the evil in them, you see the wrong in them, and we're tempted to fight it and attack it and call it out. But I believe that will only continue to stir up contention. It will only continue to stir up division and strife and frustration. And ultimately, we all know that our hearts don't change by someone just calling out the bad in us. So that's an extremely difficult charge. But in some sense, that is the Lord's to sort out at the end, right? So I encourage you with that today. Thank you for joining me. Bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.